Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session. We will just wait a couple of minutes for others to join. Is it okay with you guys? Okay, anybody of you who is joining for the first time or was not there in the last problem solving session? Because this is kind of a continuation of that session. This is just to give me a hint that should I go into recap or should I continue? You guys have been there for the previous sessions, right? So you know that this is an interactive session. So I would just be asking you to turn on your mics. Okay, do you have any doubts regarding the assignments that you have already submitted? I guess 3 assignments have been submitted now. No, okay. Guys, we'll be starting by 6:05. Till then, calling once again. The Does anybody has have any doubts regarding the submitted assignments, assignment 1, 2, and 3? Okay, so no doubts. And the people who joined in last couple of minutes, were you there in the previous session or not? This is a continuation of previous session, so I would know if I have to recap the things we covered last time. Anybody who was not there in the previous session? See, from your silence, it feels like uh, nobody was there. Because if you were there, you would know that I really want you guys to use
Hello.
your mics. Yeah. Hello, sir. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Sir, can you explain me about some dummy activities where, why they are introduced and where they are introduced?
Okay. Dummy activities. For sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
We'll solve a problem that will give us an idea.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else you would like me to focus on or shed some light? Okay. So let me formally start this session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the course Project Planning and Control. The course instructor is Professor Koshy Verghese. This is live session for week 4 contents. I am Venugopal Mahajan, a PhD fellow at IIT Delhi. As you have been following this course, this is about basic concepts in project planning and control. So we will be dealing basically with the scheduling part. And week 4 is about network representation and analysis part 2. So part 1 was covered somewhere around week 3. Now in this session, what you can see is we have got repeat of some contents last time, like event times, activity times, and we will be discussing slack and float, and obviously critical path once again. So yeah, what do you mean by slack? What do you mean by float? Anybody?
So Slack and float both have the same meaning in terms of what they're representing. Like they basically represent the relaxation that
Okay.
can be provided. But when we kind of talk about Slack, so that is referring to event, and when we talk about float, so that refers to an activity. We
Uh-huh.
are specifically referring to an activity.
Okay. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Some relaxation or some scope that you have got,
Yes, sir.
and in India, adjust kar lenge, right? We
Yes,
keep
sir.
on adjusting. So let me tell you, when I planned for for today, I had given myself enough float for each and everything. Like I had time to prepare for. Okay, there is one query. Missed to submit assignment week 1 and 2. Uh, okay, there is no chance for resubmission. But one thing is that your cumulative score would be best of 6, and that would be 25% of your final score. So remaining 6 assignments, if you submit, that would be good enough for you. Yeah. So I was telling that from last night itself, I was already on the critical path for this session. That I
Yes,
had
sir.
to I had to go through the material. I didn't get time, and this session required some good numericals. We will see why. And so I had to make those numericals, and that took time. And my daughter just turned 1 month, so we had to take her for photo shoot also. And with
Congratulations, sir.
yeah, thank you. So as it happens with kids, we planned that okay, we booked the photographer for 11. He said no sir, we'll start by 12. So lost 1 hour there. Then by 12 she became cranky. Feeding time, lunch time. Thank you guys. So feeding time, and also which we started by 1. We planned for 3 hours, but it ended almost. So we were supposed to finish by 4 p.m. Okay, enough float so that I could take some rest and be energetic for you guys.
But
Uh,
gradually the flow disappeared.
yeah, it happened, and by the time I came back home, it was almost 5:30. So, yeah. So you see that even if you keep some float, keep some slack, things are bound to happen. These floats and slacks keep disappearing.
Uncertainty.
Yeah, uncertainty, definitely. So, see, why I'm telling you this story is that in books, it happens that for the people who have been on site, or even for the people who have studied this topic in schools, you know how to calculate slack and float numerically. And for those who haven't been through these topics, even with a 15-minute numerical, a 15-minute session, you would know how to calculate them numerically. But the problem comes how to use them. Okay, you plan for it, there is some float. and how to use them, who uses it, all those kind of questions, the practical understanding of it, it is not clear in any material. Even if, okay, you guys might have heard of project management professional certification, PMP and all, right? Even if you go through those
Yes, sir.
materials, uh, I mean, they are like, they give you certification that okay, this guy knows about project management. Even if you go through those material, numerically they are sound, but practically how to use it, no, no, it's not there. So what I would request you guys is that even while going through the numericals, keep bringing your queries, keep seeing specifically like what is happening, why is it happening. I would try to put from my own end, but if you guys have more queries, more insights, the discussion would be on another level totally. Okay, so what we would do is we would start with a numerical itself. What you have to do is perform a network analysis. You have been given activity duration IPA. So what is the first step? What should we do?
We are given with the predecessor relationship of various activities, so we can draw the network directly.
Okay, drawing the
And
network diagram. Which kind of?
yeah, like we have to decide that whether activity on arrow, activity on node,
Okay,
which
so
one.
which one? Activity on arrow or activity on node?
So, like in previous session, you have told that AON is quite intuitive and easier than drawing AON A. So maybe AON.
Okay, so this question will try ON, and obviously we have to discuss dummy activities also as promised earlier. So we will make AOA also, but for another question. Okay, so AON, help me draw this. What you can see is that no IPA, A and C, right?
Yes, sir.
So let me draw it like this. What I feel it should be. And B comes here. Then from A and C you have got D, right?
Yes, sir.
Uh, then from C you have got E. What else? You have got F and G. So you have got F is 6, and that brings us to our project finish, and somewhere here project start. Help me check the relationships if I'm marking it correctly or not. Okay. Uh, does this network seem fine to you guys?
Yes, sir.
So anybody of you has trouble following what we did right now, or why we did? Okay, so if no trouble, let's start marking. Let's start doing our network analysis. Network analysis. What's the first step?
We'll be calculating the early start by using forward pass
Okay,
method. Yes, sir.
so forward pass and then backward pass,
Yeah,
right?
back pass. Yes, sir.
So let's do it. Okay. Uh, does anybody of you have a query that last time when you were solving it, it was circle, and this time it became some rectangular shape.
I think like it's just a matter of fact, like how we want to represent it.
This
I
was
don't.
the one we used last time, right?
Yes, I don't think it will affect anyways.
Okay. See, this is a visual representation, so
Yeah.
let's,
So what looks visually appealing to that can be used.
yeah. And right now we are interested primarily in the activity times, right? Early, early start, late start. So
Yes.
this also seems fine. Okay, so let's write it. This becomes 0, 15, 15, 15 and 19, 34, right?
Yes, sir.
What about this? 0, 9, 15, 18, 34. Guys, you can follow, right? Any step that you can't follow, just ask, or just ask me to take a pause. Okay, so same case here, 9, 15. Let me write it for you guys once. Similarly, coming this side, this would be 9, 38, right? So 38 and 18, this becomes 38, 48, and your project finishes on 48, right? Forward pass, everybody okay with this? Let's do backward pass
Yes.
also. 48, 48, 38. Similarly, one arrow coming back, 40, one arrow, 34. So one arrow again, 38, and 3, 35. Similarly, one arrow, 38, 9. Okay, again one arrow. So 34, is this 34? No, this is not 40, right? This is 48, and this is 42. Similarly, one arrow backwards, this becomes 42. 42 and 19. How much is this now?
23 to 23.
23. Uh, Similarly, okay. So 23 comma 35. So this becomes 23. Similarly for this, 35 comma 9. So 9, 0, and this becomes 8. Okay. Forward pass and backward pass done. Any confusion? No. Okay. Are the values correct? So can you see the critical path?
Like C will be there. C, E, and G.
Okay. Yeah, CEG seems to be the critical path. But
Yes.
how? How can you arrive at this?
Like there is no slack, or you can say delay provided, since the earliest start time and the latest time are equal, so no relax or delay.
Okay, but this thing is not quite. I mean, you can see it, but we didn't calculate it anywhere, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we didn't calculate slack or float anyway.
Mhm.
So what we would do right now is we would make this into a table, and like we did for EST EFT, we will try to solve it in a tabular form first, and then bring it to our network. So the first question here arrives is float. What do you mean by float? We already discussed. How many types of floats are there?
Three types of float:
Okay.
total float, and independent float, and free float.
Okay, total free float and
Interfering float.
Yeah, interfering is also one. Four.
okay. So we have got four floats now. Mm, what do you mean by total float? What do you mean by free float, independent float, interfering float?
So total float is basically the lags that can be provided without affecting the project duration PD.
Okay.
And when it comes to free float, so it is the like we add some constraints to the total float. Like now it is the maximum delay that can be provided without affecting the uh, earliest start time of the succeeding activity
Okay,
for the
so
free
now you
float.
are bringing in account the succeeding activities also, right?
Yes, sir.
Uh, so if free float there is succeeding activities and independent float, we would take care of preceding activities, right?
Yeah, preceding independent flow, like it is the kind of worst case if we say like we are saying that our preceding activity is having a late finish, and also our succeeding activity is having a, you can say, early start. So now what is the relax or delay provided for the
Okay.
activity in concern?
So now independent float has become worse case. Okay, what about
Yes, sir.
interfering float? See,
Interfering flow.
the name itself shows interfering float, and independent float you are saying it is the worst. Then what about interfering?
uh,
See, independent float cannot be the worst case na, if there is something interfering. Okay, we will see these in terms of figures. Then it might give us a better idea. Yeah, I've got a raised hand. Guys, you can just turn on your mics anytime. Okay, do you want to add something? Do you want to say something? Mr. Rahul? Okay, you all know that this is a activity on arrow representation,
yes, sir.
right? Uh, okay, negative float is also there. Negative float. If there is something negative, then there should be something positive. If all the above things are positive, then there should be zero float also, right? Natural numbers का rule है.
Yes, sir, there is a possibility of zero flow.
I mean, if we are talking, okay, so when we go into negative, then it becomes negative, positive, zero. Yeah, we will see negative float also. Okay, so this representation, anybody who is not familiar with this representation, activity on arrow, this method is actually called ADM, activity diagramming method.
Okay, sir.
So let's see. You have got I is your tail event, J is your head event, and activity. So where can you have float? See, either you can have float here at your head event, at your tail event, that there is some relaxation or some slack here, or you can have during your activity, or you can have towards the end, right? If there is a chain with two nodes and one chain length, you can say that if you have to relax the chain, there are only 3 points. I mean, one is the end, uh, one is the first end, second is the other end, and in between somewhere. So you have got from the image itself, you can see that there can be at max three types of floats, right? Or
Yes,
three
sir.
locations of floats. Types also I am not talking about, because if you talk, then I and J would be same type, right? So some float at the event and some float during the activity. So what people have done is float during the event, they are calling it slack, okay, and here in activity they are calling it float. But how does it matter? How does it change your perception? Let me give you an example first. Or Let's just add some timings here. And this is your, okay, 15, 20, 31, 38, and 10. So that is your early time. Okay, late time, early time, and late time. Is this possible? I mean, the values I have just given to
As,
you.
so like forward pass, like it should be 15 if the early start is 15, eh?
Yeah,
So 15 plus 10,
it
it
should be
should be
31, right?
it should be 35 then. 15 plus 10, 35.
25.
Ah, sorry, 25.
Yeah. And similarly, if you see 38 minus 10, it would be 28, right?
Yes, sir.
So, but still the values I give is true. If I say that these values are
Like
true,
yeah, if it's like we are considering a partial form of a network, like for a specific activity, maybe there can also be some more activities that can be that may be terminating to j or at I. So
yeah.
in respect
So,
to that, it is true.
see, the first and foremost thing that you visualize right now is that if you're talking about only one activity coming out of a node or only one activity merging into a node, you will say that okay, there is no need to calculate slack or float because in mathematical formula we have not left any space for uncertainty. So slack and float will only come when we have got merging or diverging nodes,
Yes, sir.
right? So if this is a case like this, and similarly this is a case like this, then and only then you will be getting these values.
Yes, sir.
So this gives you a picture that anytime you're talking about slack or float, you have to look at the complete picture, or even if you don't want to look at the complete picture, you have to see nearby things. So now you have got, I guess now you are happy with these values.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so uh, let's try to draw this on a timeline. Okay, so we have got 15, 20, somewhere around we have got 31, and somewhere here you have got 38. So what does this show is, what is your activity duration? Your activity duration is 10. Your activity could start at 15, right? Let's suppose your activity starts here, then when will it finish? It will finish by
Uh,
15 to 25.
yes, sir.
But at the latest you can finish till 38. What about this duration?
Water float.
Total
So
float, 13 days.
yeah, so this is your total float, right? Where you are not concerned about early start time. You are like, okay, this is the latest finish time. So if I have finished by the latest time, my project will not get delayed. So you have got total float here.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, let's say you are again starting at 15, completing by 25, and yet you want to finish by 31, so that your preceding activities, your succeeding
Succeed.
activities don't get affected.
Yes, sir.
So that becomes your free float.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let me give you another scenario. Okay, uh, you are starting by 20, so you are finishing by 30, right?
Yes, sir.
And yet you have this float. What is this?
So like if
Interface.
we're yeah, interfering,
Interfering? Really? See,
like if we will like the dotted line was up till 31, then I think it will be independent.
Okay, total line was till 31. Okay, so what is happening is that if you delay your activity till 31, okay, so this is like one day only. If you delay till here, you are sure that succeeding activities won't get affected. I mean, you are not interfering with succeeding activities. But if you delay beyond 31, you have started eating into the float of succeeding activities, right?
Yes, sir.
So this becomes your independent float and this becomes your interfering float. So
Okay, sir.
basically, the four basic types of floats we saw, you can see it on your figure, right? Now, let me, what can you say? Cricket. What is a googly? I mean, you guys have been following Murli Dharan, Shane Warne, Anil Kumble, and my question is simple. What is a googly?
Total float. Googly means total float.
No, no, no. I'm just asking about
Like
the ball,
in
the variation
general
of
terms,
ball.
I have not been into very much into cricket, but what I feel is like it is a kind of misleading ball. Like it seems easy, but it's hard to play. I think
Okay, so somewhat misleading. Like it was supposed to turn towards the batsman and it's turning away from the batsman, or the opposite of it, right?
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's try something like that. Okay. We have been starting our activities here, right? Now let's suppose I am focusing on the end. Okay. Let's complete my activity by 38. So when is my activity should start by 28, right? 10 days duration. Then what is this?
Like in this case, like the preceding activity, like EST of preceding activities is being affected, but sorry, succeeding activity is being affected, but
Yeah,
you can
we
see
are
that.
not even commenting on what is happening in the preceding activities, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So preceding activity is not affected.
I mean, it can be affected, it can't be. We don't have any idea about it because we are stopping at latest start time, right? I'm not talking about 15. We are not going to earliest start time. We are talking about latest start time, 20. So we are not worried about preceding activities at all. Then what is this? Okay, have you guys thought about, I mean, how many of you have done float calculations before or have seen something like this before?
Like we used to calculate the float in general way, like seen the first drawn way only. Like this way, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. So what do you think? What happened right now? I mean, okay, this is not a googly. What was happening was that for in this cases we were talking about forward pass only, right? This was
Yeah,
happening.
so it could be backward pass.
Yeah. So if you're already if you're already solving numericals on both the bases, forward pass and backward pass, then there could be backward pass also, right? Uh, but when this happens is okay. I will give you just a simple example to remember that okay, this can happen when you are doing resource scheduling. Okay, and you want to level your resources towards the end. Okay, this is like you're doing towards the starting. In resource scheduling, let's say you are doing towards the end. In that case, you will get this kind of situation. So the name here is, I don't think anybody would be, you would be facing it in your numerical or would be talking it in general terms. But this is when you talk about resource scheduling and do backward loading, you should know about it. So in this case, this becomes free float start, and this is also free float, right? Free float end, because you are calculating backwards. Here you are calculating forwards. Forward. Okay. I know. something like what happened. So this is again a star mark. We will see when we try some resource scheduling.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so now let's make the table and write the formulae. I have taken the pick, so I'll just help you write it. We will get early start time. Okay, so early finish time, late start time, late finish time. What is the formula for this? Okay, we have just calculated these values, so I can just write it here. uh, 0 15 8 23 15 uh, 34 23 42 0 9 0 9 15 18 35 38. What about E? You have got 938 938, and F is uh, 34 40 42 48, and this is 38 48 38 48. See, this happened because I didn't have enough float. If I had left myself enough time to solve these questions beforehand. Yeah, so total float you saw right now. What is total float? Total float is late finish time minus early start time minus duration,
Yes, sir.
right? So this is your total float. So we have got the table. Let's calculate it. Total float. So late finish time minus early finish time. Okay.
Early start time.
Yeah, early start time minus duration. So this actually becomes, you just subtract any EST minus LST minus EST or LFT minus EFT, right? Okay, let me show it to you. What is LFT?
For the first activity is 23.
No, this is LST plus duration, right? No, this is not how we calculated, right? If you have to calculate any of these, you can say LFT minus EST plus duration. Okay, I mean, I know, I don't know why I just did this, but okay. Can you guys see the formula now? For total float
Yes, sir.
calculations, you can,
LFT minus EFT.
yeah,
Like we don't have to worry about the third thing.
yeah,
Late finish minus eight earliest finish, I guess.
yeah. So it
Maybe.
could be late finish minus early finish, or similarly, what is late finish? It is late start time plus duration minus uh,
ठीक है.
early start time plus duration. So any of these, if you subtract, either take these pair or this pair, you will get your answer in this case, because we are not talking about interruptible activities right now. Okay, so let's just calculate it. So this becomes 8, again 8, 0, 20, 0. What about this? 6, no, 8, and this is 0. Okay, so we,
This formula, the formula like the final that we have arrived at, like
yeah,
LFT minus EFT
yeah.
or LST minus EST, like, uh, but it seems to be the formula of slack. But we are calculating total load.
Okay.
Like float has like a duration of the activity to be subtracted.
No. Okay. See, right now you are what you would see. Okay, Slack. We can instead of talking about it, we can just imagine it here. Okay. What is the Slack here at the at the tail event?
The tail event like it's 20 minus 15.
Yeah. So
5.
Slack here is 5. Similarly, Slack here is how much? 7.
Yes, sir, 7.
Yeah. Anywhere can you see those figures coming in? Like if it is 25, your total float becomes 13. Your free float becomes 8. No, not 8. How much? 5, 6. Free float becomes 6. Independent float 1. And interfering float is how much? 7. Right? These are your values for this case.
Yes, sir.
Um, 5, 7. 7 I can see, but 5 I don't see anywhere. Still, do you think that total float is equal to slack? Okay, we will see to it very soon. Right now, you can see that the
Like we started from, I was just saying that because like we started from subtracting the duration as well, but the final formula that was in front of us, like it only consisted of the latest finish time and the early finish time, or latest time, so L minus E basically.
yeah.
So that's why I was confused, like L minus E is for slack, so
Okay.
we are not considering the
See,
duration.
what you can see here is that when you're talking about L minus E for event, it is slack. Right now, if I talk about L minus E in this case itself, right? For activity,
Yes, sir.
what is your
Yes, sir.
total float? Latest finish time minus earliest start time minus
Minus.
duration.
Yes, sir. 38 minus 15 minus
Yeah.
10.
Now what the formula we just derived is, let's subtract latest finish time minus duration, so that will give you latest start time.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
But it is not equal to 28 here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this gives you
Yes, sir.
the distinction.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this becomes your total float. What about free float? Mm, yeah, free float. We know that it is early start time. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, early start time is not to be affected. Of the succeeding activity is not to be affected.
yeah. So this becomes early EFT minus EST minus duration, right? Free float. Early finish time minus early start time minus duration
Yes, sir.
gives you your free float. Free float start, like we discussed it in one more component. Okay, so let's calculate this also. Free float. Early finish time minus early start time minus duration. Okay, so this becomes 0. In this case, okay, are we solving it correctly? Guys, if
Early
I
finish
go by
time.
if I go by this manner, you would say that every time my free float will come 0, right? I mean EFT minus EST plus duration. This is also equal to EFT. So free float every time should be 0. This formula. So where did we make the mistake?
We have to take the successor activity, basically.
Yeah. What we are worried about.
Like the early finish time of the activity in concern, like that will be basically the EST of the following activity.
Yeah. It can be or it cannot be. Right. So what we would do is that we would modify it, that it should be, where is my cursor? And okay, yeah, this color even I can't see. So yeah, so this would be early start time of succeeding activity minus early start time of
Yes.
this activity under consideration, free float for I, minus duration
Duration.
of I.
Yes, sir.
right? So let's try to calculate it. You see, even the formulae are now becoming somewhat complicated. What about activity A? Succeeding activity is what? B and D. What about early start now? Early start in both the cases is 15.
15, yeah.
Yeah. So 15 minus early start is 0. 0 minus 15 again becomes 0. Free float.
True. So there is no free float actually.
Yeah, there is no free float for A. What about activity B? Activity B, its succeeding activity is F. So early start time is 34. Activity B, early start time is 15. 15 minus 19, again 0. Is it the case? Free float is again 0 for B also.
Bit confusing.
Okay, why so? We discussed the formula, right? Early
Maybe,
start
sir,
time.
you can yeah, you can write the formula again over there, like
Okay.
on this slide.
So free float is equal to minimum of EST of succeeding minus EST act minus duration. Okay.
We can consider the later one as early finish of the activity as well.
Uh, so late of what?
Early start activity minus duration. If we can plus and keep it early finish, it will be very simple. That's
Uh,
how I feel.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
That,
confusing, right? Because we
yeah.
are
Just for
making
the
so
for
many
the sake of
communication.
solving, I
Yeah, yeah.
mean, yeah. What we see here is the formula that we wrote,
Acha,
and
okay. I joined late, so no worries.
okay. No, yeah, definitely. We also simplified the formula for total float. So here also we can simplify it that minimum EST minus EFT act, right? Anybody who has confusion in this, what we did right now?
Yes, sir, this is okay.
Okay,
Basically, EST plus duration, so EFT.
yeah. So let's try to do it. For activity B, succeeding activity is activity F. So 34, 34 minus uh, EFT of B, again 34, 0. For C, uh, it would be D and E. So in D and E, the maximum EST, minimum EST is 9, right? So 9 minus 9, again 0. For activity D, succeeding activities F and G. For F and G, it is 34, and D can finish earliest by 18, right? So 34 minus 18, how much is it? 16, right?
16, 16.
Okay. What about activity E? It is G only, 38. So 38 minus 38, again 0. For activity F, no predecessor, right? No successor. What about this case? If you have got no successor, how will you calculate it? See, the formula you have derived should be universal, right?
Like that, that's the terminating point of the project. So
So, like we drew it,
PD,
na? For this case, we will just take project finish,
yeah,
48.
PT, project duration.
Yeah. So 48 minus uh, for F it
48.
would, yeah, 48
Zero
minus
only.
34. Hmm?
48 minus.
Uh,
We are talking of F or G.
yeah,
I
for
think we are talking
F.
F. So 48 minus 48 only.
48 minus 48 and
Only
40, right?
40, 40, 40. Sorry,
40.
40. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's 8.
and in case of G, 48 minus 48, 0. Uh, so yeah, some more values again. I will write these formulas in one slide if you guys need it, but right now I need this space. So coming to the next, what do we have? Independent float. Let's calculate it. So what is independent float? Independent float is this value. What is this? Early start of succeeding activity minus late start of activity under consideration minus duration,
Yes, sir.
right? So this let's write it.
Maybe you can directly subtract early finish time and latest start time of the
Uh,
activity.
yeah. So latest start time of activity minus duration. So this becomes EST minus LFT, right? EST succeeding minus LFT,
So,
or
like, can we not just modify this formula in terms of the activity that is in concern?
yeah, but
That will be
see,
easy.
we are worried about when the succeeding activities will start at the earliest, right? We are worried about this point for independent float. This 31. What is 31? 31 is the early start time of succeeding activities.
Yes, sir.
So that this is no connection with the activity under consideration. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. And so this is one thing, and you can simplify it to total float minus free float because you have calculated these two values.
Yes,
Or
sir.
if you want, we can see it on this figure also.
Total float minus free float is equals to interfering float.
Okay, yeah, yeah, it should be interfering float. If I see in the figure, it comes out to be interfering float.
Yes, sir.
So independent, we have
So
to
maybe if we can, yeah, we can first calculate the interfering float
yeah,
by this
no,
formula.
okay, that if we directly have the formula, we can calculate it. But can we simplify independent float again in some way? I don't think so. I think yeah,
Like independent, yeah. Can you just move back?
yeah.
So like if we derive the interfering float first like by subtracting TF and FF, and then we're gonna just subtract interfering float from TF.
No, it doesn't make
Okay,
any
okay.
sense, right? I mean, if you subtract interfering float from TF, it again becomes free float.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's just follow the formula in this case. EST for succeeding and LFT for activity. For activity A, succeeding, and this is also minimum, right? So for activity A, it comes out to be for AC EST is 15 and LFT of activity is 23, right? So what is the free float now? Independent float, sorry. See, let me write it for you. Okay, if we have activity A under consideration, earliest its succeeding activities are B and D. Earliest B and D can start on 15, right? And latest A can finish on 23. So what does this make you? What is the independent float now? Is it
Like
minus 8?
yes, sir. It's coming to negative.
No. See, independent float, this is not a kind of float that you will get negative values. So, independent float is equal to, if it is greater than equal to 0, or 0 in case it is negative. Okay. We will see why. Uh, we didn't. Can independent float be negative? This is the question that we will solve as the part of this. Discuss the significance of float with reference to activities B and D. Okay. So let's just calculate it. In this case, it becomes 0. For activity B, F is the succeeding activity, right? So 34 minus 1 can be finished, 42, again 0. For C, this D and E, 9, again 9, 0. Help me write the remaining values, guys. For D, 34, right? 34 minus latest finish of D is second, 38, negative 0. For E, what you will say? 38, right? 38 minus 38, again 0. For F, 48 minus 48, 0 and 0. Okay, all the values are 0. We will see the significance. What about interfering float? Interfering float we know, right? Total float minus free float. We just saw it. So let's calculate it. Total float minus free float, 8, 8, 0, 4, 0, 0, 0. Okay.
Yes.
A lot of calculations, a big table that we have completed. And this is just the first question of our session. Activity B and activity D. So which one would you like to pick first?
B.
Okay, any other opinion? Otherwise, I will have to start with B, right? It has already. Okay, so. Okay, so let me take a picture and try to draw it for you. Okay, so if you talk about activity B, what is the timeline that we can draw? Similar timeline that would be 15, 23, 34 and 42, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's draw it. See, I'm not worried about rest of those two values, right? Because my duration is 19, right? So this is our early start time, and this is our late finish time. What about its preceding activities? See, for B, preceding activity is A.
Yes, sir.
When can A start? When can A finish? At the earliest, it can finish at 15, or at the latest, it can finish at 23.
Yes, sir.
Right? So I am marking 23. What is this? This is late finish time of preceding activities. So this automatically becomes early start time for activity B. Sorry, late start time for activity B. Latest
Fine.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine.
Right. Similarly, if I go into this figure, the succeeding activity is what? Activity F.
Correct.
Earliest, when can it start? At 34?
34, yeah.
Yeah. So 34 it becomes your latest start time for succeeding activities. Okay. Now let's see what happens. If you start your activity B at 15, how much time will it take to complete? 15 plus 19, almost 34 till 34,
Hmm.
right?
Correct.
So if we are at 34 already, uh, do you think that uh, if we delay even this duration by 1 day, will it start interfering with our activities, succeeding activities? See, if you just delay this activity by 1 day, 19 becomes 20, your
No.
this becomes 35, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
35 means you are already affecting your succeeding activities.
Yes, sir.
39, late start. Okay.
34.
Okay, 34. Let me write it clearly.
Then it is okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Now it
So,
is interfering.
yeah. So it's like, so you can see that there is no free float here.
Correct.
But if you increase till, if you have scope till 42, right? How many days? 8 days of scope. Till then, if you increase your duration, you will say that okay, this is the latest start time for succeeding activities, right? So see here, if you delay your activity B by 42 till even till 42, you can finish by 48, right? Without exceeding your project duration. Can you
True.
see it on the figure?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this becomes your what? Total float, and free float is 0, as you saw right now that there
Hmm.
is no scope for you.
Yes, sir.
But what about independent float? You can see that there is no scope to move your timeline here or there. I mean,
Hmm.
if you
Without
start
affecting.
by, if you have the latest start, right, 23, imagining that early activities are delayed, so what you can see is that it is automatically going to, so if starts by 23 and 19, so when will it finish? It will finish by 32, 42, right?
Yes, 42.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, 42. So if it finished by 42, you already know that you have used up all the float that was available. So another activity would definitely start at the latest start time. If you delay it by even 1 day, it will start affecting your project,
Yes, sir.
right?
So 0. At
Yeah.
the end.
So your free float again becomes 0. Okay, I will also discuss why I'm forcing you to go through these figures again and again. Okay. So free float is 0, independent float is also
Independent.
0,
Yeah, independent.
and interfering float, you know that it is 8, right? I mean, you have got a scope of 8, right? If you delay by 1 day itself or 8 days, you are interfering with the succeeding activities,
Yes, sir.
right? So interfering float is 8. Now tell me where this 8 come from. Let me go back to the figure. For activity A, what was the total float?
8.
23 minus the.
Yeah. For you will see that for activity A and B, total float was both was
8.
8, right?
Yes,
8.
8.
Yeah. So what you see is that if you use if you delay your activity A by 8 days, activity A delayed by 8 days, you will say that this is the total float for activity A, right? I mean, your table shows it is the total float for activity A.
Correct.
So if you use it, are you capable of using the total float of activity B?
Not possible.
Why not?
It has been shared, right, in A and B.
Yeah.
A So A, where you have already consumed this A at
So
8 days.
so in case of total float, you will say that it is kind of a shared float.
Correct.
Yeah. And so if you have got shared float, that's why you have got some independent float and some interfering float. Okay.
Hmm.
So total float
Yes.
is not for an activity, but you can say it is for a sub section of a project or the whole project. Okay. So you saw what happens.
The sharing part is basically interfering float. Shared
No,
part.
no, no, no. Interfering float is what happens at the. Okay, let me. This part again, we will see one more numerical. Okay, we have to analyze activity D also, no?
Yes, sir.
Uh, yeah. So we will analyze activity D, and that would give us the idea. For activity D, what is the values? 15 and 38, and duration is 3. Right? So EST, LFT. What about preceding activities? For D, preceding activities are C and 9, C and A, right?
Yes, sir.
So earliest, what will we take? Earliest start time, earliest finish time, right? So it should be minimum or maximum.
Maximum.
Maximum, right? Because A can finish by
Yes, sir.
15, C can finish by 9. So we are worried about at max,
Then only.
right? So that is early start time. What about latest finish time for preceding activities? Latest we can see A can finish by 23 and C can finish by 9. It is in critical path. So A can finish by 23, right?
Yes, sir.
So latest finish time of succeeding activities, this is 23. Uh, what about okay, that is preceding activity. What about succeeding activities? You can see that latest it could be what, 42 or 38. Earliest, sorry, earliest.
Minimum.
Yeah, minimum. So 34, right? Minimum is what? 38 and 34. So 34.
Yes, 34.
So you have got 34, and that is the uh, EST of succeeding activities, and this is LFT of preceding activities. Did I put the values right? Okay, so in this case we will start seeing some different values. Activity D, 3 days itself, right? So if it starts at 15, it completes by 18. So you have got 20 days scope, right? Here, so 20 days becomes your total float,
Total mode.
right? So this is activity D. Similarly, if you start your activity D at this 15, finish by 18, but early start for next activities is 34, right? So
Yes,
you have
sir.
got some scope again, that you can delay your activity D by these many days. How many days? 16 days, such that even the
It
early start of succeeding activities is
is not
not
affected.
affected, right?
Yes, sir.
So now can you see some free float that was not there in activity B? In activity B, free float was 0, right?
Yes, sir.
In activity D, you can see that it can move around for 16 days. What about
Yes.
independent float now? So let's say the previous activity is finished by 23.
20.
right?
23.
This is the late finish time, 23. So your D will now finish by 26,
Yes, sir.
and still you have got some scope,
34 minus 26.
right? That you can start by 34. So independent float is now what? 8?
Yes, sir.
8. What about interfering float?
Four.
How?
Total float minus free float.
Okay, that is one thing. Can you see it on the figure?
Maybe like if we deduct 38 from like 34 from 38, then also it is coming 4.
Okay. So see, let's do one thing. See, this is the early start time for succeeding activities, right?
Yeah.
And this is the late finish time for
Latest.
D. So even if you complete by this time, activity D, right? So 34 and 34 minus 3, 31. Even if you start by 31, you are not affecting your succeeding activities, right? But
Yes.
even if you delay here for one
One
more
day.
day, you will start affecting your succeeding activities,
Yes, sir.
right? And at max, how much delay you can use here? How
4.
much float? 4 days.
4 days.
Can you repeat this?
Yeah. So see, activity D, latest you can finish by 38. I am going backwards this time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at latest you can finish by 38. But if you finish by 38, you are affecting your succeeding activities, right?
Okay.
But if you finish by 34, you are not affecting your succeeding activities.
Hmm.
So these 4 days duration, that if you use this 4 day delay, it will affect your succeeding activities. So that is what you have called interfering float.
Okay.
Okay. So guys, are you clear about floats now? These 4 types from each direction, and can you see it happening? And obviously, in case of D, if you want to match the values, do you think our values will match?
Quick match with.
The table we made right now, no?
Yeah, they're gonna match.
See, in case of D also we are putting independent float is 0. Is that correct?
But there we obtained something else. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, see, was the figure correct or was the formula correct? See, that's why the stress is that it's very easy to go through these formulas and start simplifying them. Okay, in case of activity D, is there some uh,
This one is D.
yeah, is there some independent float?
Yeah, independent float we are to find
Yeah,
out now.
Eight.
8.
Eight.
we can see it in the figure, right?
Hmm.
So what happened? Why is it not there in the?
Like, is it also like a kind of shared thing?
No, see, shared or not, if you are talking about floats related to activity D, it should be visible to you right now in the table.
Yes. Yes.
Like we saw in case of activity A and B, the total float was shared, 8 days was shared, but we saw the figure 8 in both cases. What happened here? We are not seeing any value here, activity D. So that means we made some mistake. What is the formula for independent float? Early start time for succeeding activities.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
For succeeding activity minus latest finish time of preceding activity and minus the duration.
See, that means that this is not how you. Yeah, what is independent float?
Like independence float is like when we don't want to affect the earliest start time of succeeding activity, and also there is the latest finish time of the preceding activity.
Yeah, so LFT preceding
Yeah.
minus duration. Yeah, can you see the correct value now?
Hmm.
So what would be for in case of D? You would say that A and C are its succeeding preceding activities, and latest finish time for A and C is what 23. So for activity D, it becomes this value becomes 23, and what is it succeeding activity F and G?
Hmm.
When can they? Okay, early
For
start time for
activity
succeeding
D,
activities.
succeeding activity is FNG. So our earliest
What
start
it is?
time of FNG is not to be affected. No?
Yeah, so 34, right?
34, yeah.
34
34.
minus duration. So how much is it? 8.
Correct.
Yeah. So I hope now you can see why we are going to and fro and calculating the formulas again and again. That the things that seem quite intuitive from the first figure itself, you can see that it is not the case. You have to know the basic definition for each float, and hopefully from this B and D example,
Hmm.
you get the
Yeah.
better idea, right? What value
Yes.
has to be added, what value has to be subtracted. So similarly, do we need to check for independent float in each case?
Now the formula since has changed. So
Okay, why did we arrive at the wrong formula at the first place itself? And I even gave you one another thing that okay, if it is greater than if it is negative, then you put it 0, right? So why did you arrive at the wrong formula? See, we will take a this is a break period right now for a minute. Or was I just going in the wrong manner? That's why we had the wrong formula. I mean, you guys are free to say to blame me also. Nobody wants to call me out that I just gave you the wrong formula and we went through the whole exercise. Anybody?
we kind of like brainstorming. It was kind of a brainstorming session. So maybe that was a combined mistake, like from our side as well.
Okay, so it's like a shared mistake.
Yes.
See,
No,
it is not.
I
Yeah.
think that can be a shortcut, maybe, LST minus the plus duration. So I've put this in the forum, but the learning out of it that durations are and the activities are interlinking between. There is a network, whole sort of a network, and each duration has an impact in each other activity. And if we go forward and backward fast, it has an impact. So I think that's the clear message which I'll take away.
Yeah, that is one thing that when we are talking about, as we saw in I and J case also,
Hmm.
that okay, where did it go? That if you are talking about floats, you have to take care of preceding and succeeding activities. In the
Yes.
same manner, you cannot go on simplifying the formulas
Hmm.
each and everywhere,
Correct.
right? So, can you guys calculate the independent float now for each activity? Yeah, it cannot be 0 as you can. Okay, I'll just show you why it cannot be 0. Okay, from the figure, is it clear that it cannot be 0? Or, sorry, it cannot be negative. That's the point. From the figure, can you see that can independent float be can be negative or not?
It cannot be negative. Like there is no scope. Like how can it be negative?
Uh, okay, what is float? Float is that something that we have, like that's something that we can relax.
Yeah, the
That was the
relax.
first word we used. So, if there is no relaxation, then can we say that independent float is negative? Then that means we have got lot of tension here. Okay, those are not the kind of terminologies we will be copying from other places here. Okay, so intuitively from the figure itself, you can see that if there is no scope to move your activity around, your independent float can be at max zero, can be at minimum zero, but not negative.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh, okay, so I will leave this one for now. So coming to you guys, any questions related to float now? See, we spent almost 1 hour 15 minutes solving just one question, and I've got three more. Uh, okay, any question related to float till now?
Like we were discussing a point like every float like is a part of total float. Like if we say about the interfering float, independent float, and free float.
Okay.
So is it like that if we just combine the all of the float, then the total float is formed?
I mean, from the figure, we can see that it can be somewhere near, but it is not the sum, right? I mean, if you go back, in case of activity D,
Yeah, maybe we can pick even.
right? So total float is 20. So the formula that we used, free float plus interfering float, so that becomes your total float. But the role of independent float, you don't see it in the sum of total float, right?
Okay.
So you can see that okay, it is not the sum. This question I have in front of you: who owns the float? See, okay, from the beginning example I gave you of float was today my daughter taking away my float, right? So I planned the schedule, but she took away the float.
The
Does it
priority
happen in the case
comes
of projects also?
like that depends on the priority. Like which thing is more having a greater weightage. So maybe that can there we can invest our float.
Okay, but
I
Like from
I
activity
think it
point of view, it's gonna be critical activity will deserve the float.
mm, to me I think first come first.
okay, first
Uh,
come. I mean, this is like you have got 8 days of float. If you can use it, you use it. Otherwise, next person will use, right?
Absolutely, all it is link, right? If
Yeah.
one is delayed, he has consumed that float.
Uh, okay. Yeah. But what about if someone has the power to consume the float and you are not in the position to say, okay, uh, please don't, this is my float?
So responsibility is always with owner. They will keep every float with their control. They say that you will not allow to use, but if it we use, then we have to pay for it. It will call for the legal case and all
Okay.
as a part of contract. I'm just saying. But if you ask me only the schedule point of view, I think it is first come first.
Uh, okay, first come first. Yeah, that like just if I go back to the A and B example, we saw that first come first, right? Sir,
Right.
I would give you one counter argument.
Yeah.
Let's say you are doing resource scheduling and you are doing backward loading.
Hmm.
In that case, again, would it be first come first or uh, the last one gets the float?
I'm not able to get your question. Resource
Okay.
scheduling means? Yeah.
So you have got different types of floats and different types of timelines, right?
Okay.
Let me go to activity D again,
Yeah.
because we have got all kinds of float there, right?
Hmm.
So as a contractor, you don't want to start at the first instance. This is the schedule that you have got, and as for subcontractors also, they kind of like to come towards the end, right?
Hmm.
They don't, if you give them the float of 10 days, then they would be like, okay, I'll be coming at the 11th day only,
Hmm.
right? So in case of resource scheduling also, the same thing can happen, right? That when you have got backward loading, I am like, okay, activity D, 15 is the early start date, 38 is the early finish date, so let me finish at the last finish date itself.
So then you are not giving opportunity to use the float, right?
I mean, see, for D had total float of 20 days. I
Hmm.
just used it. Can it can happen, right?
Yeah, yeah, it can happen, right?
Yeah. So then that becomes
Yeah,
last gets the all,
yeah, yeah.
last gets the pie.
Right, right. It's possible.
Yeah. So you see that, and one more thing, you have got the figures in front of you: 20, 16, 8, 4. How do you actually use it on site? This is, guys, please use your mics. I know that half of the batch here has got tons of experience, and schedule control, that has been the headache for all of you guys. Even for the guys who are studying, they know that, okay, if they are planning to complete 10 chapters in a week or so, that happens before the exams, you know that it is not going to happen, but yet you plan for it, right? Yet you schedule it. So the floats are in front of you. You have dealt with schedules. So tell me how to use these floats.
like uh, like in general terms, like we have obtained the float in terms of time only, like time allotted.
Yeah.
So basically maybe we can impart more time to the activities that are lagging behind.
Okay. I'm not. I
No,
mean, you will have to use more words.
no. I think maybe where the floats are available, we can maybe separately dealt with it. We can reuse the resource where float is less. Maybe in
like
this way,
yeah, carry on.
yeah.
Okay.
Maybe like for example activity X, like that has a greater float.
Yeah.
So maybe like if I come to resource point of view, like if there are three resources available there, for example any three machines they are available on the activity X, and there is also a possibility of a float. So what I can do is I can grab on maybe one or two machine from there, and impart that machine to the more critical activity.
Uh,
That we
okay.
can do.
I mean, that you direct, that one thing we talked about, resource leveling, resource scheduling. You went into that. Okay. Let's talk about only time. Then who uses? How do you use it? I'm not talking about resources. And like, if you talk about the chapter example, you know that you have one resource, one book. You have got uh, what, 740 hours for a week at max. So you have got limited time also. You have got float of 10 hours also, right? Resource is also the same. So how are you using the float, guys? This is a, I mean, really, for this whole thing, I mean, scheduling part, there is one concept of forensic scheduling. Has anybody come into this term? I mean, is anybody familiar with this forensic scheduling?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, what is for? I mean, forensics. When do you use it? I mean, any movies में forensics कब दिखता है? There has been some crime, and let's call the forensic team, right?
Yes, sir.
So similarly in scheduling also, it is similar to that. Let me give you. It is what? Okay. Uh, it is A's publication RP 29-03. Yeah, I'm sure of it. It is about forensic scheduling. and that gives you a detailed idea of what happens in float. I mean, what happens in a schedule, how do you calculate it at various times, and it also talks about how contractors misuse the float, how owners misuse the float, how force majeure comes into play, right? So, I mean, I will bring all these things for you guys. That's on me. I'll bring that. I will bring that. Okay, so let's talk about independent float first. Independent float. You can start latest by 23. You have time till 34, so you can delay your activity anyway, right? You're not in hurry.
Hmm.
So this independent float, for sure, this will be used for the activity itself, right? I mean, you are not even worried about if it is used or not used or what happened before, what will happen after. No worries at all. So, independent float is basically who's right? The contractor's right, or the person who is doing that specific activity, it's his right, because it is not affecting your schedule right now. I mean, if there has been some crashing or some other things have come up, it might change. But independent float, by definition, it is the right of the person who is performing the activity. What about total float then? Total float, you saw that it is shared. So you will say that okay, first come first, or the person who utilizes this, or the more responsible body will take care of free float or total float. See, what happens is, let's say a contractor has 8 days of float in activity D, 8 days delay in activity D. Do you think he will be able to claim some delay compensation, or will the client be able to charge him for delay? Okay, let me bring you back. Time is
Feel
money,
like
right?
maybe that if that's specified in the contract terms, so he's gonna charge.
Yeah. See, specified in the contract. See, for 8 days, you can see that it is the independent float. Even if your activity delays, you know that it is not going to delay your overall
PD.
project, right? You're not even going to affect your succeeding activities.
Correct, correct, correct.
So, in that case, the contractor is not eligible for any compensation,
Absolutely.
right? And if uh, let's say the contractor is using up some of the total float, let's say 4 days or 5 days, and even then there is sufficient time for the contractor to finish the work, then contractor is not eligible for any compensation, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
So you see that it is a chain here. And how does a client delay the activities? Before I go into, I mean, so are there any malpractices from the client side also? Because from, I mean, from the media itself, you know that there are so many malpractices on the contractor side, right? I mean, as Indians, we don't trust contractors, that they are working for their profit. But is there any malpractice from the client side also?
Yeah, they don't give front maybe on time.
Okay.
Or maybe they take too much time to do the inspection. So many such things will depend on owner. It depends on type of contract, what type of contract they've given.
Yeah. So you can see that there are a lot of things like that. That timely timely inspections won't happen, checks won't happen. Then there can be delay or taking the complete time available for payments, or
Correct.
simply the what you can say approval of drawings.
Correct. Approval of drawing is the critical thing, right?
Yeah. Like the okay, who makes the schedule? Who makes the schedule? Contractor or client?
Timelines given by client and contractor will prepare a schedule and it will be approved by owner.
Yeah. So contractor is making the schedule
Yeah.
because he has to perform the activities. He knows what resources he's going to use, when the resources will be available to him, and all those things.
Right.
Like when cash will be available to perform that activity, when will other activities be over. So the schedule is made by the contractor.
Yeah.
And as we saw that even client can own the float, so even client can see from the schedule that okay, some float is available here, and
Yeah.
he can use it up, forcing the contractor to hurry, or forcing the contractor such that he doesn't have any float left, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
Malpractices where no claims
Hmm.
are available. I mean,
Yes.
you
Yes.
can't even claim for it.
Yes.
So that is a contention. But from theory point of view, or from what you can say, the people who are sitting in the exams, if somebody asks you an objective, who owns the float, so we'll be like, total float is owned by the project, and independent float is owned by the activity.
Okay.
Okay.
So it may be a part of contract, maybe in PSU contract it is mentioned somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, in contracts, see, when we talked about floats, we started with delays, right? So there
Hmm.
can be three types of delays: delay from the client side, delay
Hmm.
from the contractor side, or force majeure. I mean, both have raised their hands. Okay, this is not in my control,
Hmm.
right? So that can be mentioned clearly in contract. Uh, okay, guys, can you give an example of? Okay, can you guys give examples of force majeure delay? Like which are not in control of both client or contractor.
Like the delay can be caused by natural calamity kind of
Okay,
thing.
natural calamities, COVID.
Act of God. Yeah.
So
ec-
this COVID also one of the force measure. COVID.
yeah, COVID was not there in any clause. What else?
Nationwide strike. I don't know whether it's a part of force measure or no.
I mean, strike. See, if it is just by the workforce of one place, then contractor would be liable to deal with it, right?
Nationwide, I'm saying.
Yeah, nation. If it is nationwide or statewide, then yeah,
Any
both can't do
accident
anything.
that happened during construction,
For which construction?
like any accident that accident that happens during construction.
But accident is again a contractor's liability, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So in contracts, you can have these three types of delays, and similarly, you can divide the responsibility. Hopefully, I gave you a what I can say. Uh, just dusted off some concepts on float and slack. Now, okay, we won't be solving each question. This is a network kind. Previously, what we did was we had this kind of setup, and we calculated total float, free float out of this, and that gave us some headache in remembering what to subtract, what to consider, right? Similarly, if you had this kind of representation, it let's see if it helps us or not. We have to calculate total float and free float. What is the representation? This is the representation: activity, duration, early start time, early finish time, late finish time, and late start time. Okay,
Hmm.
so uh, make sure that the calculations are in line with what we have got. Okay. uh, 35 75, right?
Hmm.
75 85, and this becomes 85. Similarly, 85 85 minus 20, this becomes 60. So for both these it is 60. 60 minus 50, 10. 45 45 25. So 10. Similarly, 85 75 75 35 35 0 0. This is forward pass, backward pass, done. So this is your total float. Okay, the square on top is your total float. You know the
Hmm.
formula. So what you can do is just subtract these. So 25, 25. This becomes 10, 0, 0, 0, 10. Can you guys follow till now? I mean,
Yes, yes.
right? So this triangle here is your free float. Now you guys will have to answer. That is one reason why I didn't complete your table beforehand. Okay, so free float. Uh, what do you think? What is better? Should we go? Okay, free float. What is free float for A? For activity B is for activity E. For this one, this would be 0. I mean, there is no total float. What about this one? 60, 60 minus 0. Okay. Are you guys happy with these values? 15, 10, 10. Rest of are 0. Or anybody who wants to, I mean, bash me for just writing the arbitrary values. Are the values for free float correct for activity B, C, and E? I'm not talking about 0 or even A also. A, B, C, and D. Are the values of free float correct? Okay. Let's see. For activity E, succeeding activity, early start time 85. Uh, right. And early start time, early finish time. Right. So this is 50. Right. Can you guys see it or not?
85 minus 50 minus 25.
Minus 25, 10. For activity B,
So 50 minus 20 minus 50.
50 minus 20 minus 15. Right?
So 30 minus 15, 15. Yeah.
30 minus 15, 15. What about activity C?
So that's 50 minus 0 minus 50. So that's
So that actually is 0, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So you know that if you have got this kind of representation, you can see from the arrows itself and mark it simpler than the table.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's much simpler.
Yeah. So now coming to another question, and this is basically for uh, okay, 10 activities. Yeah. So we had one question in the beginning about dummy activities. So we will do this with AO and AOA. So the first question here is number of dummy activities. And second question uh, is there any float for dummy activities? Okay, the person who raised the question for dummy activities, are you still here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, thank you for being with us. So, what is a dummy activity? Okay, anybody else who would like to give a hint on this?
The dummy activity is a hypothetical activity that is basically introduced to just satisfy the predecessor relationship. So,
Okay,
like it doesn't consume any time resources.
okay. So I won't go into hypothetical I would just say that okay, it is a dummy activity. It won't consume any resource. It won't consume any time. Okay.
Yes.
So this is AOA network. Can you help me draw it?
Yes, sir. Like starting like we can start with
See, let's just read the table because uh, I made these questions and these uh, these two are very simple in that manner. Okay, so as you can see, activity B and C follow activity A.
yeah,
Then B bifurcates into two D and E. C bifurcates into two F and G. Then D and E combine to make H. F and G combine to make I. And then H and I combine to make J. Okay,
yeah,
so quite simple, quite intuitive, right?
yes,
So let's just make it and let me draw it a little better if I could, if I can. Yeah, activity A,
yeah.
activity B,
And C
activity C,
and D depends on B.
right? Then
D depends on B.
no, let's have it B and C. Then B again bifurcates into two, right? D and E.
Yeah.
And C bifurcates into two,
F and G.
F and G. Then
H depends on D and E.
yeah,
So now there will be a need of dummy.
so we have got H, and then we have got I,
Yeah.
right?
And then they both terminate for the
And
completion.
they both have activity J. So what happens here?
Now there is a need of dummy, like otherwise we are gonna connect straight away D and E with H, so
See,
that will not.
one way you can say that okay, this is D and this is E and this is H and this is B. If you were naming them, you would have said this is 10, this is 20. For activity D and activity E, the representation would have been same, right? 10, 20. But that is not possible.
Yes.
Why? Because unique representation for two activities. So how can you deal with it is, let's add a dummy activity
Yeah.
and name it 15 here. See, what I did right now is that I did skip numbering so that it helps me if I have to add some activities,
Yes, sir.
right? So when you are working with the networks in the initial phase, okay, these are outdated concepts, to be frank. I mean, you are not worried about event numbering nowadays because you are not even solving on activity diagramming method, right? You are solving either precedence diagramming, you are solving maximum precedence diagramming method. So but in those days when ADM used to be the thing, so what you would do is you would simply in the starting while numbering the events, you would number them like 10, 20, or 100, 200, 300, so that that would give you some leeway that you can insert events activities like this and number the events in the mid. So similarly, if you have to complete it, let's add one dummy activity here, make it complete. Similarly, this dummy activity here, right? So we have got number of
Yes, sir.
dummy activities 2. What about float? See, I'm this one is focused on the slack and float part. Uh, or do you guys think we should first calculate the critical path in this case? Forward pass, backward pass?
Yeah, we can do that.
Uh,
So
yeah.
duration.
So how long is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, if it's feasible, like we can calculate on the previous slide as well. Only.
No, with previous slide, I think the value. Okay, let us try to write. Okay,
Yeah, that will save time as well.
uh, I'll just write on top. I will write the
The earliest, and on the bottom, maybe you
yeah.
can write the latest. Yeah,
So we have got early event time
yeah, early
and
event
late event time. Okay. So for yeah,
zero.
this would be 0.
And then
Activity A
duration.
duration is 50.
Yeah,
So this
yeah, you
becomes
can
50. For activity B, it is 60 and C is 70. So this becomes what?
110.
Yeah, 110, 130. And for activity D, it is
40.
yeah 40. So 150. For
Yeah,
activity E, it is
75.
75. So how much is it?
180,
185.
185.
Everybody happy with why is it 185?
The maximum of
Yeah,
eight.
150 and
Mhm.
185. So maximum we have written.
Yeah,
Similarly, coming in this manner, uh, F is 55, right? And
yeah,
G is how much?
70.
G is 70. So uh, this becomes
200.
200 and this also becomes 200. And for case of H, this comes to 200. And J is how much? 35.
Two, 235.
So 235. If you do the backward pass, 235 to 200, uh, 200, 200. This becomes 130. This becomes 50. This becomes 0. In this case, 200. So how much is this? 125, right? 125 and how much is it?
Uh,
200, right?
200. Yeah, the dummy.
Yeah. So we have got all the values and
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it is
can
hodgepodge now. But what I would do is let
critical.
me magnify it for you guys. Okay.
Yeah,
So can you guys see the values? And this is in front of you. Can you calculate float in this case?
yeah, we can do that.
And can you show it on the figure itself?
Like maybe we can use a different table for float and then just mark the critical activities on the network itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe sir, now you get an idea of why we were trying to do it on the next slide.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I mean, just kidding. Please don't mind. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's number the events. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Right. So what we would do right here is we have got two dummy activities, right? 5, 6, and 7, 8.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
Can you guys see float and slack? I mean, float in this case, total float for these activities.
So for
Just go
five
by the
and
basic
six,
definition. Everybody, what is the definition
yes,
of total float?
the maximum delay that can be provided without delaying the PD project duration.
Okay, and
So,
what is the formula for total float?
so that will be latest finish time. If we are talking about the activity in concern, so latest finish time minus the earliest start time.
Okay, so let's focus on activity 5,
Two,
6.
yeah,
What is
200
the
minus 150 minus the duration that is 0. So 200 minus 150.
uh, Yeah, so it would be 200 minus 150.
Yeah, minus 0, so 50.
Uh, okay, so that gives you total float is equal to. Everybody, are you happy with this calculation? See, this is like um, we went into this calculation just to show that okay, one way of dealing with dummy activities, how dummy activities are introduced, and that gave us a tangent of right now you know that the duration of dummy activity is zero. Even if you utilize 50 days of total float, you don't know where to do it, right? Its duration is zero. So what does this total float of 50 show you in case of dummy activities? The formula is giving you 50, right? Anybody who has a confusion, I mean, who doesn't agree with this part?
Like that's not gonna be used for this dummy activity because that's not an activity at all. Maybe that can be utilized for some other activities. This float.
Okay, for some other activity. And right now we know that there is a fight going on who will use the float. Okay, what is the free float for activity 5-6? Quick.
So that will be 185 minus 150.
Yeah, 35, right?
So 35.
Okay, I'm just writing what you said. See, it has got total float also, free float also, interfering float also. Anybody or any guesses how is this float coming for an activity for which the duration itself is zero, the resource utilization is zero, but it still has some float? I mean, doesn't it sound like a oxymoron to you guys? Any guesses? I mean, I see 15 of you with me. Guys, I will need an answer. Any random, I mean, any guess would work right now. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any guess?
It is giving confusion totally.
Okay, so what's the confusion, sir? We are in the discussion mode. So, what is the confusion?
No, confusion in the sense that dummy activity is to create the logical
Yeah,
connection of the network.
yeah,
Now it has created, or the total float and free float is also there. So
Because the
I'm,
duration, duration is 0.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like something is out of the total thing, nothing is expended.
yeah.
So we are obtaining the full values.
Okay. You know, okay. I would leave this for you guys.
Yeah, yeah, that's better.
No, 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 no. This part I will discuss. This part. But we discussed about types of float, right?
Right.
We didn't talk about negative float. So negative float happens when there is some constraint. Like let's suppose that your finished duration instead of 235 it would have been 225, right? That your critical
Mm.
path says that your project duration is 235, but you have to anyway finish in 225 days. Then in that case you would have got negative float, right? On critical path. Like if you have to finish on 225
Like this
days,
225, like that will be like active while backward pass or forward pass.
backward pass.
Okay,
Forward
okay.
pass you are getting 235. But in
Hmm.
case of constraint, when you go into backward pass, this value would have been 190.
Hmm. Yeah.
So in that case, what would have been your total float? 225 minus 200 minus 35 minus 10,
Yeah.
right? So now you guys can see that negative float can come, but when you have got some constraints, right? Uh, okay. So now you know that there is negative float. Now you know that on critical path there is zero float, and you know that on not critical path, not critical activities, you have got all types of floats coming in. There is one float. This is for you guys. Phantom float.
So that's
What's
for the
that?
dummy activity.
No, 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 no. It's not. It's not for the dummy activities.
Okay.
Any guesses?
So another type of float. What?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. It is another type of float.
maybe if like we have calculated the PD, for example, 235,
Yeah.
and maybe there is a little bit more relaxed like in the PD itself. Maybe that uh, can refer to this phantom.
Okay. So
Just a
this
guess.
part I would leave this for you guys to Google, and in next session I will, if not, I will bring it in the next session. Okay. I mean, I like the concept of having all types of floats. Initially, we saw the definition. By definition, there could have been only two types of floats, one at the ends and one at the activity duration, right? During the activity or towards the end of the activity, start or finish. But while discussing, we got four definitions, then we got negative float and all. And similarly, we have got something called phantom float also. Yeah, this is for you. Yeah, and in case of dummy activities, uh, when you are when you are getting some total float or free float, it actually attaches to your preceding activities.
Okay.
Okay, so no confusion. Dummy activities are for the logic, and the direction is this way. So if you have got some dummy
Yeah.
activity, so
That's for the immediate predecessor.
yeah, so that is for the predecessor. But what happens if you have got two predecessors? I don't think you will be facing that situation, but in that case also, it is for the predecessors. Okay, the one on the critical path for that
Yeah.
subnetwork.
Okay.
Okay. So, sir, does this clear your confusion?
Yeah, yeah. If you can, share an example of any construction or the site, it will be helpful.
Uh,
Yeah, the usage of dummy activity.
Sir, usage of dummy activities is only for the logic of network.
Okay.
Yeah, it you won't be seeing it practically. And as one, we also got one term. It is a hypothetical activity.
Hmm.
So, it is not even an activity. So
Yeah. So basically, that is like make to make the for the grammatical purpose you can say of the network to
yeah,
make that grammatically correct
that's
drawing
it.
part.
So
Okay. Fine. Fine.
see, right here itself, this was our case, right? D, E, and H.
Hmm. Hmm.
You had so many options. Like, this is one thing that we did. D, E, H. If you wanted, you could have done like this also. You could have replaced these. Uh, you could have done this E and D. Let me name them. Uh, 30, 40, and 35. You could have E and D, or what else you could have done? You could have made it. Uh, you could have made this one a dummy, and made this activity E and D. The logic remains same, right?
Hmm.
So any
So now like these networks like these aren't used like you said that precedence diagram method. So
yeah.
that is now being used.
Okay.
That to software.
Yeah. See, what is happening is that uh, the relationships that you see in activity diagramming method is just one finish to start, finish
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
predecessor activity to the
Hmm.
start of successor activity. But right now, when you have got so many relationships coming in, it doesn't serve the purpose at all. You have got start to start relationships. Like, if one activity starts, the another activity can start, but it doesn't matter. The the predecessor activity is being covered by first activity itself. Okay.
Like start to start, like is it like that both the activities have to start at the same time?
Uh, I will. Okay, guys, we are already exceeding. So first, do you have any questions or any doubts regarding the topics we have talked about or previous weeks? See, the purpose of this session is that, so I have to talk about that. But if you guys want, I can talk about the relationships, other relationships also. Okay, so no doubts. Then coming to other relationship part, we saw. Let me make it a box for you guys. Okay, this is one relationship that you saw. This is start. This is finish. This is start.
Thanks, sir. We have a question in the
Yeah.
chat section.
Okay. Yeah.
No,
Thank you
just
for
just
pointing.
a just a question. Maybe afterward you can share that.
Yeah. Forensic scheduling and how to effectively use float by contractor. Sir, I think forensic scheduling will give you what points that are looked into.
Okay.
Yeah. So the practical thing can be derived from there. Let me. I said RP 2903 is what I remember. Let me check once. Yeah, no, it's yeah. The number is same. I was just saying it in the wrong manner. I would write it here. Yeah. So recommended practice. Forensic schedule analysis. This is number 29R. RP for recommended practice 03. You can Google it. I mean, I think it should be available.
Sure, sure. I'll do it.
Yeah, it is an. I mean, in most of the places, it is quite concise, and they are not using so many words, but it gives you an idea of what's happening.
Fine. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, so you have got one kind of relationship in ADM that we have been discussing,
Finish to start.
right? But if you draw your boxes like this, what other relationships can you see? You can have this also, start to start. Like,
Start to start.
let me give you an example. Start. You are working on a road construction project. As soon as you start the earthwork on one level, right? You can start for GSB also if earthwork has been done. You can start following it, right? By some days, or
So there will be lag in
there will
between
be
as
lag.
well.
So you add lag here.
So that then it not stay start to start.
Yeah, it is start to start plus lag.
So that like that is kind of partial. You can say dependency.
No, not partial. The dependency is complete. I mean, you are dependent on the previous activity, right?
Mhm.
So it is not partial. See, the dependency is there. What you can do is you can add lag, and lag could be in terms of days or percentage of work done, right?
Okay.
So you see that even multiple are coming in, or if you want um, any usual example, like if two people are doing some things in parallel, so consecutively, sorry, not parallel. If one person starts, I mean, I can't remember any factory example, but yeah, you can have start to start also, or you can have finish to finish also. Like, uh, let's say your GSB start your WMM can only finish after your GSB is complete, right? I mean,
Yes, sir.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is your finish to finish relationship, and you will see it might also happen that GSB is taking 30 days and WMM is taking 25 days. Even if the lag is of 2 days, your WMM can finish first. If you go by a simple analysis, this will become 0, this will become 30, this will become 0. Okay, this is 0, so this can start by 2. So 2 plus 25, 27. It can finish by 27, but finish to finish relationship is there. So it cannot finish by 27, but by 30 only. Basic, like, I'm not going into detail right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be your finish to finish relationship. Then similarly, can you have start to finish relationship?
Like the rest of the one, like the first one is fairly easy to comprehend, and the rest one are quite difficult.
Okay, this finish to start is
Yeah,
quite
fairly.
visible with
Yeah.
finish to finish and start to start. Also, I gave you some example that you can see, but right now I am giving you another case. This is activity A, activity B, and let me write it for you. Activity B can only start. नहीं, sorry, this is
No,
not the
that would be
case.
finish to
Uh,
start.
this is finish to start, right?
Start to finish, we have to.
Uh,
You were right, I think.
Start, finish
no,
to start. No, no, finish to start was the
yeah,
first one.
this is like,
Start to finish, na?
yeah, finish to start.
Correct.
Yeah, finish to start.
You're
Okay,
writing right, I think. Activity can only
Finish.
yeah,
activity B can be finished only once A can start.
activity B can only finish
Yeah, okay. Finish.
after activity. Okay, let me use another alphabets. Activity Q can only finish after activity P starts. Okay, and can you can you find an example of this situation?
Activity Q. No.
Okay, this is basically seen in construction. This example is basically seen in case of demolition works, or what you can say some rehabilitation works. Let's say on a site you want to install a electrical line.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so electrical line you have to install, but before that, if electrical line is not there, then you would have been using a generator, right?
Mhm.
Generator. So there has to be an activity of dismantling the generator,
Yes.
right? MNTLE. Here, dismantle generator and install,
Electrical line.
right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you can say that only you can see my arrow is wrong. That's why at times I was like I'm looking at it so many times and
Start to finish.
yeah, start to finish. Okay. Activity Q can only finish after activity P starts. Yeah. Uh, so ac- activity Q is dismantling the generator and activity P is installing the electrical line. So you know that only after you are starting the installation of electrical line, after that only you can completely
Yeah,
dismantle
yeah.
your generator, right?
Because there will be no, power shortage kind of thing. Like there will be no kind of situation like we have no power.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I got the point.
So can you visualize this kind of relationship?
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is one of the, I mean, in 4, this is one where you will find very scarce examples, but this kind of situation also happens if you are planning at this level. So all these
Maybe
things,
we can have another example, like maybe we have some like two dye machines.
yeah,
So maybe one is quite old and now we are planning for to buy a new one. So after that old one is dismantled, so then only once we are ready to ready to use the new one, then
yeah,
only we can dismantle the old one.
yeah,
So kind of that as well.
yeah, that is also an example of this relationship. As you can
Hmm.
see in construction, dismantling, demolition, for those examples you can find these relationships. And now itself you saw that there can be lags, or there can be multiple relationships between two activities.
So lag not necessarily ensures a partial dependency.
No,
That we have also, yeah, yeah.
yeah, there can be multiple relationships also. So all those kinds of relationships ADM is not capable of handling. So
So our networking techniques fail at that moment.
no,
So
they
basically
not.
AON and AOA.
See, they don't fail actually, but at different levels of understanding, at different levels of scheduling, you will be using different styles if needed.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so with this, I am bringing this session towards the end. Any questions? Any questions from your side, or something that I should bring in the next session?
No question from my side.
Okay. Yeah, so this brings us to the end of this session. Thank you guys. Thank you very much for being interactive and for listening to me for so long. Hopefully, I will see you in the subsequent sessions. Thank you for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Uh,
Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.